Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone as we have once again the privilege to learn together and prepare for Shabbat Parshat Chukat. Parshat Chukat, like every other Parshat that we learn, and we keep saying there's so much to learn. Every time I get to Parshat Chukat, I always remember an incident that happened in my life when I was in yeshiva. We were in high school in Mesivta, and during that time, the Harry Potter series was very famous at that time, coming out, and people were really into it. We were reading it and memorizing it and stuff like that. Then at one lunch period, we were sitting and eating lunch, and a bunch of yeshiva guys, and someone asked someone, "No, in which book in Harry Potter can you find this and this idea, or this and this statement, or this someone said this, someone did that," whatever it was. And we were like, oh, here, this, that page. So it was one of the more yeshivish guys that were on the table, and he didn't just get up and go, "Oh, what are you guys talking about?" One of my chaverim. So he said, "Let me ask you, where in the Torah does it say that, which parsha in the Torah does it say that Miriam passed away? And who else passes away in that parsha?" And I was stumped. I really was stumped. I didn't know. And here was a guy who's, in yeshiva, every year listened to the Torah, and I just didn't know which parsha it was in.
You knew Harry Potter, but
Yeah, exactly. So, Harry Potter I knew, but that I didn't know. And so, it ignited a flame that said, what, I need to know Yediot Torah. I need to have knowledge, factual knowledge of stuff that are brought down in the Torah. And Baruch Hashem, Parashat Chukat is the parsha that you have so many things going on, and including the loss of Miriam, of the well of the water that was in the zchut of Miriam. We have the loss of Aharon and the clouds that got lost because of the zchut of Aharon. And we have Amalek trying to come and attack the Jews. All this can be found in this week's parasha. So although we're going to be looking at the parasha and learning some lessons, we're not going to be able to get through all the details of the parasha. So, as I want to recommend, if you have the chance, to please go through the parasha, take an English chumash, take a midrash, and learn the story, learn where everything happens. If you have more time, learn the midrashim. So let's start our learning and our lessons and stories on the parasha. Famously, Parashat Chukat starts off, Zot Chukat Torah. This is the chok of the Torah. This is a law that doesn't have a rationale. It's not something that we can understand. If someone is tameh, you have to sprinkle on him the ashes of the Paraduma, of the red heifer, right? The red cow. And it says in the in Pasuk Zayin, it says the tameh hakohen ad ha'arif. So what happens? The person who was contaminated to the tumah of a mit, he comes to get purified, and the kohen sprinkles on him the ashes, and now the kohen becomes tameh. And this is where the chok. This is where it's hard to understand. The person who is purifying them becomes tameh, and the person who was tameh becomes purified. How does that work? So Rav Yitzchak Mivorka, when he was teaching about Paraduma, he said Paraduma, it's all about the mitzvah of ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. You hear him say on the whole mitzvah of Paraduma is about loving your fellow like yourself. Mitzvah ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. So then no one understood. It's very enigmatic, very puzzling. Paraduma has to do with taking away tumah. What does it have to do with v'ahavta kamocha? So later on, the grandson, or Rav Yitzchak Mivorka, explained as follows, or Rav Mendel explained. He says, in the process of being mitaher, the person who was mitamet to mit, to death contamination, to corpse contamination, the kohen becomes impure by the same process, right? That's the whole hard thing to understand. Rav Vorka explains, how is it ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha? Because the whole mitzvah ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha is giving up something from yourself in order to help someone else. When one truly loves another person, he's able to feel satisfied and feel pleasure through sacrificing stuff that he belongs to him to give to somebody else. That makes him ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. It defines a person. A person who's always focused about himself. A person who's only focused about himself. He's a very selfish person. And that's not why we were created. Hashem didn't need to create people. There's no reason. Hashem is Hashem. He doesn't need people. Hashem created people and He's giving them. And Hashem says we have to follow His ways, which means our job is to also give people stuff. Our job in this world is not to take, but rather to give. And that actually brings a person to feeling more satisfied than anything else. This is what the Kohen was doing. The Kohen who is being mitaher, the tameh met, he's giving him his purification and taking his tumah. This is ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. To be able to take someone else's problem and give him something good instead. Harav Yechiel Michal Gordon, Tzadik Nebracha, was the Rosh Yeshiva in Lamza. He was known to be a Gaon. The guy was a genius. And he was also known for his extraordinary sensitivity to someone else. He was also known as the Eov of his generation. Why was he known as the Job of his generation? When he was first married, he lost his wife almost immediately to typhus, to disease. Later on, he got married to his wife's sister. They had a lot of children. And during World War II, he was in America raising funds for his yeshiva when the war broke out. And by the time the war ended, his wife and all of his children, except for one son, so there's about 11 kids, were all killed out in the war during the Holocaust. And just him and his son survived. And when they did, they moved to Petach Tikva. They went to Eretz Yisrael to live in Petach Tikva. And his remaining son was in the yeshiva that the Arabs made a pogrom. They started entering the yeshiva and they started killing students. And his son was one of the guards watching the yeshiva, and the Arabs killed him. At the time, the Rabbanim in the community said, no one should tell Rav Gordon what happened to his last son. So much tragedy in his life. If you tell him this, it's going to be the end. He can't tell him. And for a while, no one told him anything. And one day, an elderly Jew who was friends with him came over and started to, talk to him and say, listen, I feel your pain. You must have gone through so much through life. Your wife, your children, your first wife, and now your last son was killed in the yeshiva on the pogrom. And this was the first time he was hearing it. And the story goes that Harav Gordon, Yechiel Michal Gordon, didn't say anything. He finished his conversation with this guy. The guy left. And as soon as he left, Rav Yechiel Michal fainted on the spot. He fainted on the ground. His students ran over. They started to revive him. And, you can see he felt very bad. But after a while, one of his students said, Rabbi, the man told you this like 20 minutes ago, and you only fainted 20 minutes after he left. What happened? And he said, what do you mean what happened? If I would faint when he was next to me, how bad he would feel. And so I controlled my fainting until he left, so I wouldn't make him feel any worse. Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. He takes away someone's feeling bad, makes himself feel bad. He just got bad information. His last son, his last remaining descendant, gone. And yet he was able to control himself because he loved his brother as himself. Every, when you put on a play, when you put on a show, you have the main characters and you have the supporting roles. Here in the Panimal Terror, he says that every Jew's role in life is actually a supporting role. It's not the main role. You yourself is not main. That's not important. Your job is as a supporter, as a role, as a supporting role, to help other people. That's your whole tachlis in life.
So everyone is a supporter.
For someone else.
And every other is a main.
Right. But your job is a supporter to someone else's main. And his job is a supporter to someone else's main. But the way you should look at your own life is to look as being a supporter.
I think I heard
In
a story.
essence, everyone is a supporter and everyone is a main.
Right. But what do you look at yourself? You look at your supporting role, not at your main role. That's what he's trying to say.
I once heard a story about the Baba Sali after he had a neighbor, something like that, and their leg didn't feel well, and something like that, and they asked for a bracha, and he did a bracha down for them, and then he was recovered, and he got it, and he got the.
And he took the pain instead.
Yeah.
Help somebody else, and taking their problem. This is a big thing because a lot of people are, on the other hand, they say it's not my problem. I don't want to get involved. That's not the way that we're supposed to be. The Panimal Terror, he says over here that he was once at a hotel for Pesach, and after Shaharit, after the prayers, everyone was going to the hall for a kiddush, and he sees one person in a wheelchair and no one pushing him. So he walks over to him and says, "Can I help you? Can I push you?" And the older man says, "No, I'm waiting for my wife." And it was getting later. He says, "Let me take you." He says, "No." He says, "Let me help you." And he takes him there. Finally, his wife comes, and the man says to the author of the Panimal Terror, he tells him, I used to be the guy that would be the first to set up the kiddush. I would go there, I would help, I would do, and now I'm stuck in a wheelchair and I can't do anything. People go through life, the life takes a toll on them and it changes on them. Question is, what can we do about that? How can we help? Here he ends off by saying he came across a 1-minute video which begins with a blind man sitting on a street corner with a little cup in front of him and a sign saying, "I am blind, please help me." And people are just walking by, and every once in a while someone stops and puts a coin inside. And suddenly a young woman walks by. She takes the sign and changes the wording on the sign. And suddenly person after person stop to put money inside. Not every couple of people. Every person is stopping to put in. What was the secret? The woman changed the message to something everyone could relate to. She wrote, "It is such a beautiful day, and I cannot see it. Please help me." And so this made people wake up and realize that before them is somebody who wants to just enjoy a simple pleasure, and he cannot. Just words, but words that made an impact because they struck home. And this is what I believe, what the Panimal Terror wants to tell us from Rav Vorka, is what the whole mitzvah of Paraduma is loving someone else, looking towards someone else, taking from them their problem, making it yours, helping them instead. I know it's a big madrega, but the Torah wouldn't tell us this lesson unless it was somewhat feasible for us. And so, B'ezrat Hashem, we should start in our lives, especially at home, to try to take problems that people have. You should know a lot of times people's problems is just that. It's just a problem until someone else listens to it, until someone else hears it. Because once you tell someone else, first of all, it comes out of your chest, it becomes easier to handle. And also, if you tell somebody, they're able to help you. Now, you have to make sure you're telling the right person. If you're going to tell someone who's a big worrier, every 5 seconds he's worrying about something, you tell him, it's just going to make the problem bigger. Because now he's going to start worrying about your problem and blow it out of proportion. You got to talk to somebody who knows what he's talking about, somebody who's calm, somebody who knows how to approach life, someone who has lived life. Okay? I have a friend of mine that he had a grandfather that anytime he had a question in life, he used to call his grandfather and ask him. I didn't have any grandfathers growing up. My grandfathers passed away young, so I never really saw them. But I was always jealous of that in a good way. And hopefully I would be that to my grandchildren as well, that they would want to reach out to me for advice, to life advice, because the people who live their life already, have lived to an older age, they already went through so much in life. They're able to guide you and help you and show you and tell you what to do. Let's move on to another lesson in this week's Parashat. I think this is one of the most famous and classical lessons in this week's Parashat. It says in this week's Parashat, in verse 14, Zot HaTorah Adam Ki Yamut Be'ohel. This is the Torah. This is the Torah of a person who dies in a tent. Really, the Torah is trying to tell us of the halchot of Tumat Hamet. If someone passes away, the whole tent that they're in becomes full of Tumah. So everybody in that tent becomes Tameh. Say again? Right, you have to get sprinkled by the Paraduma. That's correct. That's why it's in this Parsha. Correct. So now, the Gemara in Masechet Berachot tells us, what does this mean? Zot Torah Adam Ki Yamut Be'ohel. That tells us this is Torah. Torah means, how does a person learn Torah? Adam Ki Yamut Be'ohel. In order to learn Torah, you have to be willing to kill yourself for it. That's what the Gemara in Masechet Berachot says. So now, the Chafetz Chaim says, I have a question on this. Because the Gemara in Yomah learns from a pasuk in Vayikra that says, V'hai b'hem. You have to live with the Torah. And that means, if Has Shalom, a person has to be Mechalel Shabbat in order to live alive. Right? V'chai b'hem, you have to live in the Torah. Which the Gemara tells us, if someone is going to die, Chas v'shalom, on Shabbat, and he is Pekuach Nefesh, you have to save him. You're allowed to be Chalel Shabbat, because it says, keep him alive. V'chai b'hem, you have to live with the Torah and the mitzvah. So how can here it tells me, Adam ki yamut be'ohel, that's how you learn Torah, is dying with it, and yet it tells us learn Torah and stay alive with it. So which way to understand? So the Chafetz Chaim gives a beautiful mashal, the most famous of mashalim, I think in my life, I've heard this story over and over again. I remember once getting called into my Manal of the Bet Midrash, Rav Skula Shlita. He called me in because I used to come late to yeshiva. It was a tkufa I was coming late. So he called me in and he told me this mashal, or a variation of this. So let me tell you what the Chafetz Chaim says. Chafetz Chaim says there was once a successful businessman who serviced customers from far and wide. He was so busy with his business, he didn't have time to go to the shul and pray normally during the week. Instead, he gobbled up his davening at home, in the back room of the shop, in the back of the car, whatever it was, he was able to put on his tefillin, quickly take them, put them on, take them off, say Shema, Shemon Esrei, and move on. Many years passed. And one day, as he's getting ready in the morning, he looks in the mirror, and you see I have some white hairs here. He had a lot of white hairs. And he sees the white hairs, and he says, when does a person get white hairs? When a person is approaching his late stages in life, old age. And he says, what's going to happen? Going to get to Shemayim. It's going to be Din v'Heshbon. They're going to ask me, did I learn Torah? Did I set times to learn Torah? Did I do business faithfully? I don't know nothing about Torah because I'm always so busy with business. He said, that's it. He saw his hairs and he decided he was going to change his life. So I know when I said this in the past, someone once asked me, but Rabbi, I'm bald. What do? I don't have any white hair. So I told him, it's bald. I don't know. It's even worse. You gotta get very serious here. So he says, you know what? I'm going to shul today, and after shul, after prayer shaharit, I'm going to stay in the shul. I'm going to learn Torah. 2-3 hours pass, and there's people in front of his store, and the store is closed. People are looking for him. He's not there. So they're calling his cell phone, no answer. They're calling here, calling there, nobody's gone. So the people, they know his wife's number, they know where she lives, where his house is, and they go to the house, so they're calling her on the phone. She comes outside, and then she says, what happened? They say, I don't know, what happened to your husband? He's not in the store. She runs, she's trying to call him, no answer. She goes to the store, she tries to help out in the store. And lo and behold, 3 hours after opening, this guy walks inside. She says, what happened? Where were you? People were here. He says, I had something to take care of today. This better not happen again. We're losing money. How could you? We worked so hard for this business. And he didn't tell his wife anything. And they went through the day. The next morning, same story. He went to shul and he stayed for 3-4 hours. Again, people are calling her. Hey, He comes in and again, she starts giving to him over the head. You this, you that, all our money, all our business. How? How are you doing this? What happened? Where'd you go? He says, I had something to take care of. No, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And every time he comes late, he says, something to take care of. She says, that's it. I'm going to find out what he's doing. And she goes and she follows him in the morning as he leaves, and she sees he's going to the shul, and he's sitting in the shul, he takes a coffee, he has his Gemara, he's learning with other people. As he comes out, she starts screaming, how could you? How dare you? Our business, our this, our that. And he says to her, sweetie, honey, if today the Malach HaMavet, if the angel of death would come and take me today, what are you going to say? You're going to tell the angel of death, how can you take him? I need him for the business. I need him for the this. I need him for that. That's it. The angel of death is going to come. He's going to take me. It's over. I'm not going to be able to help you. She said, yes, that's true. So he says, you know what? This is what we need to think every morning. Every morning when I'm not in the store for 3 hours, I'm dead. I died. I'm not available. And then when I come in, you should be very happy. You say, Mazal Tov, it's Chiyat HaMetim. I came back to life. And now I'm here to help. This is what the Chafetz Chaim says. It means the person who's learning Torah has to be considered as he's dead, which means that he's dead to the world. Right? Today, unfortunately, the person is connected to the world at all times. He's learning Torah, and his cell phone, his iPad, his this, his that, is running, coming, going, doesn't know what's happening. You can't learn focused if you're too busy with everything in the world. Now, you should learn in your business, while you're at business, you should. Or whatever you're doing, if you have time, you should learn. It's very good as a business trick, because they say if you're learning Torah, the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to learn. Satan doesn't want you to learn. So what does he do? He right away sends you customers. So you shouldn't learn, right? So it's a good thing to do. But when you have Sidarim, when you're really learning and you're really trying to understand, you have to be dead to the world. No one can bother you, and you can't be bothered by anything. Because that's the only way a person is going to really learn in Torah, is when he's fully concentrated in learning Torah. Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, says, imagine that Hashem decided that He was going to do Tchiyat HaMetim for the world, but for 1 hour. All the Jews are going to get up from their dead. They're all going to get up back alive, and they're going to have 1 hour again on earth. What do you think these people are going to be revived for 1 hour is going to do in that 1 hour?
Learn.
So Menashe says, the exact answer is that they know what is the most important in this world. Talmud Torah connected Kulam Torah is compared to everything. There's nothing more important or more special or more holy or more worthwhile than learning Torah. They're going to get up and they're going to go learn Torah. Not going to go check out the sports stats, who won, who lost, the NASDAQ, the stock exchange, the price of diamond, the price of silver, price of gold, the oil, how much, who went, Biden, Trump. No, that's not going to be there. The only thing they're going to be worried about is, let me get into that Beit Midrash. They're not going to even look for their mother, father, child, son, daughter, nothing. They have 1 hour in this world. All they're going to do is to learn Torah. Pirkei Avot says that we're supposed to live our life as if it's the last day. Because what happens on the last day? And this is not just a phenomenon by Jews, but everyone in the world. We'll have about the Goyim as well. If they know they have 1 day left, they try to live their most meaningful life. Whatever's meaningful to them, that's what they're going to do.
Are going to get burned by the sun.
That's right. But what's meaningful for us is to sit and to learn Torah, become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabotai, the question to us is, we are alive. We have the opportunity, but we have to pretend that we're dead so we can learn Torah. And we have to pretend that we're dying so that we can really, really pay attention to what we're learning and to do what's most meaningful in our lives. And this is very special when it comes to the summer, because in the summer, Baruch Hashem, we're in a little more of a vacation mode. We don't have, the yeshivas are not really open, but that doesn't mean that we don't learn Torah. And we don't learn Torah with hasmada, with real concentration. Because that's why Parshat Chukat comes in the summer. Why it comes in the summer? To tell you all the mitzvot we have, first of all, achukim. That means in the summer, all of a sudden, you cannot become more lax. All year long, I made sure to pray in the minyan, and now the summer, I'm vacationing, I'm going here, I'm going there, so it's okay that I don't pray in the minyan. It's a chok. It's not what you're reasoning, it's rather Hashem said do this mitzvah, and it's for everything, for kashrut, for minyan, for tzniut, for everything that we have. It's always a hok, and a person has to follow it. But it also comes in the summer to tell us to learn Torah maximum. Maximum. Do you know that many people became great in Torah because of the summer? It's not my word saying this. Many Rosh Yeshivot said this, Rav Pam would say this, Rav Reisman says this. Why in the summer? Because during the year, you're in yeshiva. You learn what the yeshiva teaches you. But in the summer, you get to choose what you want to learn. You love something, you want to learn about a certain topic, certain Mishnayot, a certain Gemara. And the person chooses that, and with his love and his feeling, he's learning that. That makes him closer to learning Torah. He's able to learn in his own time, his own pace. And so, everybody has that job to make sure that they learn Torah. The Sfat Emet tells us what it means is Adam Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'ohel. It means to growth in Torah. In order to grow in Torah, a person has to realize that without Torah, his life is really not a life. Understand? Zot Torah Adam ki yamut be'ohel, meaning that learning Torah, without it, you don't have life. That is death. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat tells us when the Romans made it forbidden to teach Torah, right? That's in Masechet Berachot. It tells us the wicked Roman government said people should not learn Torah. Rabbi Akiva, what did he do? Continue to teach Torah. Continue to learn Torah. When Papus ben Yehuda asked him, "You're not scared of the Romans?" Rabbi Akiva gave him a story. Rabbi Akiva said, the relationship to a Torah is like a Jew to learning Torah is like a fish in the water, and the fishermen are trying to capture the fish. Comes a fox next to the water, and the fox tells the fish, "Listen, I see the fishermen are trying to catch you. Why don't you come onto the land with me, and we'll be friends, and I'll save you." Right? So what does the fish answer? Fish says, "Tippish, what are you telling me? I'm in the water is dangerous for me, but the water gives me life. You tell me to go on to land with you, 2 seconds I'm going to die. What's the point? I'd rather take my chances here." Rav Gifter said the story tells us a lot more. He says, why? He says, what happens when you pull a fish out of the water? I'm sure everyone had a chance to, but what happens before it dies?
It just jumps.
Yeah, say more. It jumps. It's flopping. It looks very, very much alive. Looks like it's having a good dance, right? If I didn't know that fish lived in water and I saw a fish out of water jumping, I would think that fish is doing a dance. It's like excitement and stuff like that. I wouldn't know otherwise, right? What happens? Torah is our lifeline. Torah is what gives us life. Because if not, you're dead. That's why you have to be dead in order to learn Torah. Because if you don't have Torah, then you are dead. So, what happens is a person leaves Torah, Chas Shalom. Something turned him off. He didn't learn Torah. He went away from Torah. People look at him and some people say, wow, what a life. Every night he's in Manhattan, he's in Tel Aviv, he's somewhere partying away, he's having a fun life, he's living the nightlife, he's drinking, he's smoking, he's, playing, he's doing all these crazy things. And people think, oh, he's living the life. He's living the life. But the truth is, he's like the fish out of water. Because once you take a Jew out of the Torah, yeah, he's dancing, he's jumping, he's all exciting. But really what's happening to him? He's dying. He's dying. And that's what happens, Rav Gifter says, when you take a Jew out of Torah. He might look like he's living the life. He's driving fancy cars. He's wearing bling bling everywhere, all these fancy stuff. I don't know what they call them nowadays, all these fancy things. And he's driving fancy cars. He's got cigars. He looks really nice. Slick hair. He's nice. But in the end of the day, that guy is really crying out for help. And he's really dying on the inside. Because there's no Jew who has a life outside of Torah. It's all based on Torah. Yes, Menashe.
And
Kihem chayenu, because this is our life. V'orach yameinu, and it lengthens our days. This is Torah. Without Torah, there is absolutely nothing. for us. Zot HaTorah Adam ki amut be'ohel. Remember this lesson, very important. Let's move on to our last lesson from this week's Parshat. Yes, go ahead. Go. You want to say it now or you want to say it later? You want to say it now? Okay. All right. I'm going to keep you to it. All right, the last lesson on this week's Parshat. In this week's Parshat, we also find, after Miriam passed away, you know that the water in the Midbar was given to the Jewish people in the Zechut of Miriam. When Miriam passed away, the well that was giving the Jewish people the water also stopped giving water. So Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go and talk to the rock.
I didn't know which ones we just got mixed up.
So exactly what happened is, there are different.
Why was that one?
So the question is, Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to go talk to Torah, talk to the rock, and what happened? Instead of talking to the rock, what does he do? He hits the rock how many times? He hits it 2 times, and he hits it 2 times. And because of this, Hashem says, "You didn't sanctify me. You didn't trust me to bring honor.
You didn't.
Therefore, you will not bring the Jewish people into the land of Eretz Yisrael." So now the Mefarshim, many Mefarshim, Rashi, Rambam, everyone argues, what exactly was the sin of Moshe Rabbeinu? What did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? Give me a few minutes. Let me just finish this thought. Many people can ask, is this the Torah and the reward? Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jews out of Mitzrayim, brought down the Torah. And in a minute, he lost the opportunity to go to Eretz Yisrael because of one little thing. He hit instead of talking. So the Rambam, Maimonides, the Rambam, the Shmona Parakim, he teaches us about the way people act, the different midot, different character traits that people have. And he says about 2 of them, they're very, very dangerous. Gava, pride being, I'm so special, is a very dangerous midah. A person has to stay away from that. He has to know that he's worth something, but at the same time, he cannot think that he's better than everyone else. And the second midah, which is very, 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 a person has to be very careful from, is the midah of anger. See, Moshe Rabbeinu, he turns to the Jewish people before he hits the rock and he tells them, listen, you rebels, you troublemakers. He got upset with the Jewish people, the Rambam says. And because of this lost temper of Moshe Rabbeinu, this is not me, this is the Rambam saying this, because of his reaction, Moshe Rabbeinu lost his ability to go into Eretz Yisrael. Harav Twersky, he says Hashem specifically did this, specifically punished Moshe Rabbeinu this way to impart a lesson that teaches a very important lesson. That a person should never allow anger to turn into rage that will deprive him of his complete self-control, because he will lose everything when he gets angry. There's a mashal. Torah Tavelberg is down, but I'm sure people have seen this mashal, heard this mashal before, that there was a little boy who had a very bad temper. Very bad temper. And he was trying to work in his temper. So his father told him, every time you get angry, here's this piece of wood outside in the backyard, take a nail and hammer it in. And the boy, every day he got angry, sometimes it was 20 times a day, he came and he nailed into the board. And as he got older, he started to control his anger and his temper, till finally one day he came to his dad and he said, Dad, today I was about to get angry, and I calmed myself out and I didn't lash out in rage. His father said, beautiful. You finally learned to control your anger. Now go to the backyard and remove every nail from the board. So he goes and he's removing all his anger. All right? And he's removing all the nail from the board. And the father tells him, now look at the board. Tell me, what do you see? And he says to his father, I see holes. Tons and tons of holes in the board. And his father says, see, this would happen when you have anger. Even if you take out the nail, the hole is still going to be there. In anger, someone can cut somebody, Hashalom, with a knife, stab him, and then he pulls it out, I'm sorry. It's too late, you killed the guy already. That's what anger does. When a person does anger, he cannot say I'm sorry afterwards. He loses out. He already created a problem that even if he does tshuva, which will work, tshuva will work, but to a point, because you can't bring someone back to life. Moshe Rabbeinu made one little mistake, and that anger cost him to go into Eretz Yisrael. Not to go into Eretz Yisrael. The Gemara Psachim says, the life of those who cannot control their anger is not a life. When a person becomes angry, his chachma leaves him. He's not thinking. If he's a navi, if he's a prophet, his nevuah leaves him. When someone becomes angry, we know it's as if he is serving Avodah Zarah. Why is that? Because he's not able to control himself. He's not able to think. He's not able to perceive. He loses his power to choose. His power to choose comes from the ability to stop, think, pause, analyze. Right? Like we said last Friday night. On Friday night, what did we say? We said a little story about a woman who goes to the doctor and says to the doctor, my husband is always very angry. What should I do? How can I save him? He's very bad for his health. So the doctor said the next time he gets angry, you're going to take the water in your mouth, take a cup of water, put it in your mouth, and swish it in your mouth until your husband leaves the room or goes to bed. She says, what? He says, yeah, this is the perfect cure. So she goes home, he gets angry the first time, she takes the water, she's swishing, and the husband walks out of the room, calms down within minutes. After 2 weeks of this going on, the wife comes back home, goes back to the doctor. She tells to the doctor, your cure worked. It's miraculous. How did it work? How did it happen? I don't understand what water in my mouth has to do with my husband calming down. So the doctor said it's very simple. There's no magic, there's no cure. But when you keep your mouth shut, right, you don't respond right away, you have less problems and less anger. And that's the point about anger. It doesn't let you think. If a person would keep quiet, calm down, he does have more time to control himself. What is dangerous about anger is that it causes us to lose control. It activates the most primitive part of the human brain. And it bypasses the choices that we can make as rational people. While we are in the grip of hot temper, we lose the ability to step back and judge. The result is that a moment of anger, we can do or say things that would have an ultimate effect forever and ruin the rest of our lives. The Orchat Tzadikim tells us a person who's angry, no one wants to be around him. He'll lose his friends, he'll lose his family, because nobody likes an angry person, to be around an angry person. And we'll end off with the story, the famous of all angry stories, I think, is the story of Hillel. Right? The Gemara tells us that there were two people, and they got into an argument. They said, you could get Hillel angry. Someone said, you can't get Hillel angry. So he said, you know what? If I can get Hillel angry, you owe me 400 zuz. Big amount of money. It was Erev Shabbat. And Hillel, our great sage Hillel, was washing his hair. He was getting ready for Shabbat. He's taking a bath. And someone is outside of his house yelling, Hillel, is there a Hillel there? And Hillel quickly stops washing his hair, puts on his robe, runs out. Yes, my son, what do you seek? This is Erev Shabbat. If Shabbat's around the corner, a few hours going to be there. And he says, oh, I have a question. Okay, Hillel says, ask. He says, why are the heads of the people in Babylonia round? And Hillel says, wow, what a great question. The reason is they have very skilled midwives. The women who take the baby out, they're very skilled and they're able to shape the head nicely. And the man left. Hillel gets back into the shower. He starts rubbing his hair again. And what happens again? Hillel, is there a Hillel? He's not calling him Rabbi Hillel, Rabbi Hillel. No, he's calling him Hillel. And then Hillel comes out, puts on his robe, stops the shower, comes in and says, what is it? He says, I have another question. Why are the eyes like this And Hillel answers him. Again, Hillel goes back into the showers. Minutes later, Hillel, where? Oh, I have another question. Why are the feet of the Africans wide? They live in marshy areas. And again, he keeps coming asking. And then the man says, there should not be many Hillels in the Jewish people. He says, why not? He says, because you made me lose money. I had a bet that I can get you angry, and then I couldn't. How did Hillel do this? Obviously, the point here is that a person has to stop, not get angry. A person came to ask a question, see if you can answer it, see if you can help. Rabotai, just to review the 3 lessons that we learned from this week's Parshat. A, we learned how it's important. The whole mitzvah, Paraduma, is ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Take someone else's tumah and give them Torah. The second lesson that we learned from this week's Parshat, that in order to learn Torah, you have to be ready to give yourself up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the third lesson that we learned was the lesson of staying away from anger. When a person stays away from anger, and we'll end up with this idea, where Moshe Weinberger says, he says, the first time when they came out of Mitzrayim, in Parshat B'Shalach, they didn't have water. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, hit the rock. And this week's Parshat, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, speak to the rock. Why the change? And Moshe Rabbeinu hits it. A mistake, but why the change? Why in Parshat B'Shalach Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu hit? And why here, 40 years later, tells him talk? And Moshe Weinberger says, because you have to know the language of the generation. What does it mean, the language of the generation? When they came out of Mitzrayim, they were slaves. In Mitzrayim, they were beaten up. Do this, do that, do this, do that. So then you talk to the people by beating them up. Well, I remember being in Rabbi Mordechai Rechamin's shul, and week after week, he tells everybody, you're going to be shashlik in Gehenam, you're going to be rotisserie style on top of the fire. And then when I was there for a week as the youth rabbi, before we gave it up, but I remember he came to me and told me, Moshe, you're going to be the rabbi here, you have to beat up the people, musaj, kill them, tell them they're all wrong. But that was, for his generation, it worked. The people, and not only that, people come to the shul every week. It got bigger and bigger. People wanted to hear the rabbi give them musar. Fast forward 40 years later in the Midbar, the people now have been living with the golden spoon for 40 years. This is the next generation. This is the people who get the man, who got the well, who had the anane kavod. To them now, you can't hit. When you talk to them now, you have to talk. Right? There was once a mashgiach. The Bacher didn't come to the Shaharit in the morning a few days, and the Mashgiach told him, take a few days off from yeshiva, think about what happened, and come back. And the Bacher listened to the first part. Left yeshiva, never came back. Because he was talking in the wrong language. But Rabbi Trenk, if you guys saw the video that I put out from Rabbi Trenk, when he would come to wake up the boys for Shaharit, he would scream, wake up, and then the boys would hide in the closet, and he didn't go, and he knew they were there, he didn't go. And then Rav Yoel Gold says that one day that he showed up by Aleinu L'Shabeach, Rabbi Trenk jumped and danced and was so happy that he showed up to Shaharit. He talked to him with love. We have to know to who we're talking about, the generation that we're in, and the language that we're using. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us that ability to talk to everyone correctly, to take the lessons that we learned and bring them to life and put them into life, and may we be zochet to the Gula Shalema. I'm going to take your questions now and answers. Okay.